Did the success of the first one, highest grossing R-rated film ever, I believe, did it take you by surprise at all?
Yes, yeah. I never expected Ted to do what it did. I mean, I thought the idea was funny, and I knew how I wanted to execute it, but I didn't think it was gonna. I didn't know what it was gonna do. While we were filming Ted, I was living in fear of Bridesmaids because that movie had just come out, and it, just felt very new and fresh and funny and sharp, and I remember thinking, shit, our movie's gonna suck, because it was an enormous success. It had made like $100 million, and I thought, God, if we can just get 2/3 of the way there, then I'll be happy. And lo and behold, we broke a whole bunch of records and wildly exceeded everyone's expectations. And I don't think you can ever predict that. I think there's an element of luck. I think there are movies that have been made with great care that have been colossal successes, and I think there are also movies that have been kind of rushed and cobbled together and written on a cocktail napkin and have been very disorganized that have also accidentally become big successes. I think you see things both ways, and this was a movie that Ted was made with a lot of care to a lot of attention to detail.
Clearly, but you get that success, and people are going to want more. And what was your attitude to that? Did you, were you always thinking of a sequel, or did you need to be convinced?
No, I mean, it's a sequel was always kind of floating around. From the idea of doing a sequel was always floating around since the day the movie opened, and it was just a question of what it was going to be. And for me, the only thing I really cared about was how to make it something that was going to be a different experience for me, because you're putting in all these hours, you're putting in a lot of work, it's a lot of stress, and if you add to the fact that you're doing the same movie twice, which a lot of sequels fall into the trap of doing, then you kind of making it drudgery that gives you no new stimulus. And so for me, the only thing I really cared about was, can we do something that's just completely different, and that is not a rehash of the events in Ted 1, but broadens these characters in the way that you try to from season to season of a television series. You're working with the same characters, and it's all about telling a new story.
And you very much are telling a new story. It's kind of about acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah.
This underpins the comedy and everything. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's human beings, as inherently tribal as they are, always have a tendency to classify things, whether they know it or not, as us and them. Like, this is us and that's them, and we don't want them in our group, and we are different from them. And so much of Family Guy has been sort of a mockery of that, and I find that's here in the UK, they kind of get that. In the US, they're not quite tapping into that, and at least in the press, they tend to get very shocked and horrified and offended. And you come to the UK, and they're kind of getting what it is that we're. I think audiences get it back there, but every time some new type of individual or type of group enters into the discussion, there's always that initial thing. Well, do they get the same rights? Are they allowed in? Do we treat them the same as everyone else? I think you see in the States, you see it with things like gay marriage. Something that should be, to an evolved species, a no-brainer. Yeah, of course, come on in. And it's not. It's so hard to make that leap every time. And Amanda makes that point in her courtroom speech, that every civil rights battle, we're only able to recognize the injustice years after the fact. And when the next incident of injustice comes along, we're like, well, this is not that. this is the gay rights is different than rights for black people, and it's all the same. It's all the same part of your brain saying this is us and that's them, and that's sort of what this movie's about, I guess.
I would imagine for you, it's extremely hard work making this film. As fun as it is for us to watch it, you're not only directing it, but you're Ted as well. What's it like day to day for you on set? Is it fun? Are there moments when you can kind of have a laugh along with what you're doing?
Yeah, the schedule of movie making. This was particularly arduous for me because I had just, generally there's a break in between. I had finished doing A Million Ways to Die in the West. It went right into Ted 2, which I think if I ever do that again, or if I ever try to do that again, shoot me in the head. It's a lot of work, and so oftentimes, it is fun, but you're also under such pressure with a filmmaking schedule because there's so much money at stake, and every minute of filmmaking is so expensive that it's like you're working with a gun to your head the whole time. So, some filmmakers find ways to get around that. I mean, people like Clint Eastwood will lock into this thing of, we're only doing this amount of hours, we're not going to kill ourselves, we're going to keep this an enjoyable experience, and I do respect that. I haven't yet figured out how to do that myself, but so that being said, with that intensity of the workload, it all comes down to who you're working with. And if you have a no assholes policy, you're probably going to be okay even if you're doing crazy hours. And with Mark and Amanda and Jessica and the whole crew, and it's a great bunch, and that made it a lot easier.
There are many standout scenes, but I have to mention two that just blew me away. The Busby Berkeley kind of style opening sequence. Where did that come from, that idea? And also, I'm going to ask you about the Comic-Con fight, which having been to Comic-Con...
Yeah. The opening sequence was something that I wanted to do something. I'm a big fan of showmanship, and there's a little bit of P.T. Barnum in me, I suppose. This whole idea of exciting the audience that you're putting on a show. It's a sequel, so I wanted to do something that would communicate to the audience as, hey, get ready, this is going to be even bigger than the last one. It is a sequence there's one sequence that I was under colossal pressure to cut. It was that sequence. By the studio, by everyone I worked with, and if it doesn't work, then I went out on a limb, pretty much solo, for keeping it in, because I loved it. I thought it turned out great, and I thought it's Ted. We start the movie with him being very excited about his life is great. He's just gotten married. Everything's fantastic, and this takes him into this kind of fantasy sequence, which is our opening credits, where he's just kind of he's expressing that, and then of course we come out of it and things have gone south very quickly. So, but that was a 3-day shoot. It was an English orchestra, the John Wilson Orchestra, that I've performed with several times over here, that did the track, and I was thrilled with the way that turned out.
It turned out brilliantly. Thank you so much,
Cool.
Seth.
Thank you.